say the house of God is a place of light. But when I was a boy, that house was made of shadows. It was where they whispered prayers and buried sins under marble floors, where no one heard her scream, but everyone smiled at the choir. Her name was Clara. They took everything from her, and they thought I would forget, but I remember. I remember the fire. I remember the silence. And now, they will remember me. They said I was a miracle, but miracles don't scream when they enter the world. I was left on the steps of St. Aurelius Cathedral, wrapped in a blood-stained cloth. No name, no cradle, just the sound of thunder overhead. The nuns raised me on scripture and shadows. Obedience is holy, they whispered. I learned early that pain hides behind the eyes of the faithful. My only light was her, my sister, not by blood, but by bond. We cleaned the candle wax off the marble floors, memorized psalms instead of lullabies, and when the priests passed, we held our breath. The cathedral was not God's house. It was a cage, dressed in gold. I was 10 when I heard it, the first whisper behind the curtain. Midnight. The bells did not ring, but I woke to footsteps. Wet, heavy, slow. I followed the sound, barefoot through corridors colder than death. The kind of cold that remembers screams. There, behind the crimson curtain of the high altar, I saw them. Candles, robes, eyes full of something older than scripture. And in the center, her, my sister, bound, dressed in white, the color of sacrifice. They chanted her name like a prayer, and carved symbols into her arms like punctuation marks. I didn't scream. I couldn't. I watched, as they gave her to a God I never met. That was the night I stopped praying. The next morning, the sun rose like it always does, but the light felt wrong, as if it was ash pretending to be gold. I searched for her, every hallway, every prayer room, only to be met with the Lord has taken her. No ceremony, no grave, not even a name spoken aloud. Just silence, the same silence they used to teach me obedience. They now used to erase her. I knew then, they didn't bury her in the ground. They buried her in ritual, in secrets, in robes stained with ancient lies. And me? I was just a boy, holding a candle that couldn't warm anything anymore. I made her a funeral, alone, in the cathedral cellar, among rats and broken relics. I placed a wooden doll wrapped in her favorite cloth. I lit 7 candles, one for every year we were family, and I sang the hymn she loved, but my voice cracked halfway through. I left a lock of my hair on the altar, because I had nothing else, nothing holy, nothing real. The next day, the doll was gone, the candles shattered, and in its place was a note. You are not to speak of her again. Speak, and you both are damned. That's when I realized, she didn't die that night. They killed me too. I left that place on a moonless night, barefoot, bleeding from the glass they put in the windows. But I didn't look back. They said angels watched over that cathedral. Then why did they all look away when she screamed? I slept in train stations, under bridges, behind dumpsters that smelled more honest than any incense they ever burned. The world outside the cathedral was cruel, but at least it didn't pretend to be kind. And yet, every night, I dreamed of her hands, how they used to cover my ears when the priests shouted. Now there was no one left to cover anything, just me, and the sound of the past, clawing through the walls of my mind. I found an old chapel in the woods, burnt, collapsed, forgotten. It had no crosses left, just ashes, and bones too stubborn to fall. I sat in the middle of it, staring into the blackened altar, until the wind began to whisper. At first I thought it was madness. Maybe it was, but the fire began to speak, not in words, but in memories. Her laughter, her scream, her silence. I took the Bible they gave me, and fed it to the flame, page by page. With every verse I burned, I felt her get closer, like she was rising through the smoke. That night, I didn't pray. That night, I listened. Revenge doesn't shout, it whispers. I spent years in the cracks of the world, learning how to move without being seen, how to make sound disappear. Old mercenaries taught me how to fight. A blind man taught me how to listen. A dying woman taught me how to poison a holy man and make it look like prayer. I didn't just train my hands, I trained my mind to forget warmth, to breathe through pain, to smile at the idea of mercy, then crush it like an insect. Every night before sleep, I carved a new scar into my side, and whispered her name. Clara. She was becoming my compass, and I was becoming her vengeance. 15 winters later, I returned. Same cathedral, same bells, same robed shadows watching from stained glass windows. But I was not the boy they remembered. I wore the uniform of a priest, stolen from a corpse who didn't need it anymore. I walked through the gates like a ghost returning home. Every echo in those halls remembered my name, even if the men did not. They called me Brother Thomas. I smiled, and smiled, and smiled. Underneath the robe, I carried tools, not for healing, not for preaching, but for surgery, because this cathedral was sick, and I was its final doctor. My first night back, I didn't sleep. I walked the halls, the same halls they dragged her down. My fingers grazed the walls, stone that still remembered her cries. Then I found him, the old cantor, the one who said she was chosen. He didn't recognize me, until I lit the match. He begged. I let him. I told him this was his confession. Say her name, I whispered. He didn't, so I made him sing. I carved the first hymn into his skin. Every note was a scream. Every scream was a verse. By morning he was ashes, and I was ready for mass. They gathered in the chapel. The robes, the liars, the ones who offered children to gods they invented in the dark. I stood in the pews, hidden beneath the robe of the man I burned. One by one, I locked the doors. May peace be with you, the high priest said. I smiled, and also with you, I replied. But there would be no peace today. I dropped the chalice, took out the blade, and said her name. Clara. Panic. Screams. Robes fleeing like rats from their golden cage. But there was no exit. Not anymore. Only a sermon, written in blood. I moved like smoke. I struck like silence, and with each throat I opened, I remembered how she smiled. Only one remained. Father Marius, the architect of every scream behind every curtain. I found him in the confession box, not praying, just breathing, like a man who knew hell was coming. You were a good boy, he said, as if that would save him. I stepped inside the other booth. 2 sinners divided by wood, and 30 years of silence. Do you confess? I asked. To what? He said. So I told him. Every name, every scar, every scream she was never allowed to finish. And then I said her name, Clara, and the world went still. I tore open the booth, dragged him to the altar, and made him face every symbol he twisted into a weapon. Look what you built, I whispered. This isn't God's house. It's yours. A temple of rot. He begged, cried, prayed. So I did the one thing he never did for her. I listened. I left his body at the altar, laid her doll beside him, and lit the match. The fire spread like truth. Hungry, old, and righteous. Stained glass melted. Statues wept molten tears. And for the first time in decades, the cathedral was honest. I didn't watch it fall. I didn't need to. I carried enough ruin inside me already. I walked into the fog, barefoot again, but I wasn't running this time. She is not gone. She walks with me, in every shadow I cast. And wherever I go, the fire follows,